I heard in 2011 that Luigi's Mansion was getting a sequel, Luigi's Mansion 2, I was very excited. Luigi's Mansion is my favorite game of all time, and to see that a sequel was coming out for it was amazing. I mean, I loved it. I was absolutely so stoked. And then the game came out, and obviously, as most of you know if you've watched this channel, I was very disappointed. So today, I am going to be talking to you about why I was disappointed in Luigi's Mansion 2.
So some of the good things about Luigi's Mansion 2 include the mansions, particularly Mansions 1 and 5. Mansion 1 is Gloomy Manor, and that's the very basic one, the very typical one. And Mansion 5 is a treacherous mansion. Those two I like because they are basic traditional mansions. And I'm going to kind of throw in mansion number 2, which is Haunted Towers. I'm going to throw that one in there as well, except I have one main problem with it, as well as the other mansions, which I'll mention later. Next up is the music. I absolutely love the music in this game. It's actually pretty good. There is a problem I do have with the music, which again, I'll mention later in the bad section. But just have a listen to some of these soundtrack pieces. As you can see, the soundtrack is a lot more diverse than the first game, but there is still the underlying problem, which again, I will mention later. The third thing I think that is good about the game is the controls. I think with the limitations of the 3DS, they handled the controls pretty well. Being that there's no second thumbstick on the 3DS, it's hard to, maneuver the vacuum. But in Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, they made it completely intuitive and easy to. Even though you can only face one direction while you're, getting ready to charge your, your strobe, I think it's still really easy to use. And the last thing I think they did really well was, having Luigi's personality be shown and emphasized in this game. Luigi's personality is bubbling, his scaredy cat side is coming in, and I think it works beautifully with this game. Now let's talk about all the bad things in this game. The main reason I'm making this video is so that I can talk to you guys about what I don't like about Luigi's Mansion 2 and why, I think that when they make Luigi's Mansion 3, which I think is inevitable, why I think they should have returned to the original format. First of all was the structure. Now granted, this could be due to the limitations of the 3DS, or just being that, they want to make this game a pick up and play type game rather than a game where you can sit and binge play, since, the 3DS was a handheld system. But nevertheless, the mission-based structure of the game was just awful. It took away the exploration that the first game allowed, and it really, really hampered the experience for me. Remember earlier when I said something about the second mansion, Haunted Towers, and there's a main problem with it? You could not explore it. So if you haven't played, basically the mansion split up into two halves. In the main courtyard, you can go to one side and go in one door, or the other side and go in the other. Even if you've unlocked doors on one side, if the game wants you to go to the other side and explore that part of the mansion, they will lock up that one side so that you cannot explore. And to me, that's one of the worst flaws ever. One of my favorite things to do in Luigi's Mansion was to literally just walk around and explore the mansion. And, sometimes, I would have a hard time, finding a room or solving a puzzle where, Luigi's Mansion 2 will literally just, be, hey, you gotta go this way. It's all this way. Don't even look the other direction. You gotta go this way. which is good for a short play session, but at the same time, it's like, I want to explore. This is a mansion. I want to, explore it. Next up is the atmosphere. The atmosphere, it's there in some spots, but for the most part, it's non-existent. Luigi's Mansion, while it's by no means a horror game, it had a little bit of a creepy atmosphere to it. There were sections where there was no music, just the sound of Luigi humming or whistling. It had some sort of atmosphere to it. It had some sort of, creepiness behind it. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon has, while I said earlier, a great soundtrack, it's too bubbly. It's too bouncy. There's... You really feel like it's not meant to be, creepy at all. And that's also, ties into the next point, which is the ghosts. The ghosts do not add to the atmosphere. The original Luigi's Mansion, there were these ghosts called portrait ghosts. If hopefully you've seen my review of Luigi's Mansion, I talked about them in depth, but I'm going to touch on them again. Portrait ghosts add life to the mansion. It makes it seem like the mansion has real inhabitants. With this, it just seems like an empty mansion that the ghost seems to have taken over. And it's really unfortunate that they didn't do anything more with the ghosts, especially with the fact that the ghosts are so childish. They just throw things around and laugh all the time. They really just kind of remind you of the minions from, what's it called? Freaking, I already forgot what that's called because it's so unforgettable. Despicable Me, that's what it's called. Now, also with the portrait ghosts in Luigi's Mansion, I'm not saying the bosses in Luigi's Mansion were amazing, but they definitely had some sort of, factor to them that made them really nice. Chauncey, being that he shrunk you and put you into a crib, and he's throwing rocking horses at you. Bogmire, you have to suck up his shadow and throw it at him, etc. With this game, while the Possessor Ghost is kind of a cool idea, the execution of it was horrible. The only boss I don't mind is the final boss with King Boo. Simply because I don't mind it, I think it's an okay boss. But all the other bosses are forgettable to just horrible. Like the spider and stair bosses are just forgettable. But the ice boss, don't even get me started. I was stuck on that boss for 2 hours because they forced that motion control gimmick that I always say I hate, and it's just awful. Combined with how fast the thing is spinning, and the fact that it's moving farther, it's just awful. I hate that boss. That boss in the 4th mansion is when I realized I do not like this game. I personally do not like this game. Next up, Mansions 3 and 4, which is the Clockwork Tower, or Old Clockworks, and the Secret Mine. The reason why I hate these mansions is it's just design reasons. I don't think they're designed that well. It's a personal thing, but they just don't seem like real mansions. Like, the whole thing about Luigi's Mansion is a pseudo-realistic kind of game. Like, it was a more realistic take on a Mario game. How about that? It was like, you seemed like you were in this real mansion, but with Secret Mine and the Old Clockworks, you really didn't. Like, why would there be an Old Clockworks? Why would Luigi have to explore that? Same with a mine. The other 3 seem somewhat excusable, but those 2, I can't back those mansions. I don't like them. And the last thing, which to me is another really bad thing. Listen. The Polterpup missions were cute at first, but when in every single mansion there's multiple missions of you having to go and fetch something, like in the first mansion when the red ghosts take those gears, or in the second mansion when the blue ghosts take the pieces of the pinwheel, and it just happens so often. That's on top of the Polterpups, which you see at least 3-4 times in the whole game, and it's just like, why is it so reliant on fetch quests? This is the only part of the game where it's like you have to run around stupidly trying to collect all these pieces, and it takes you a whole entire mission, which is like 10-15 minutes sometimes if you're playing for your first time. It's just absolutely stupid. I hate it. I personally don't like it. But I guess to each their own. I know many people complained about that because it got repetitive after a while. But yeah. So overall, I'm going to give Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon a score of 5 out of 10. Now, obviously, this game is a personal opinion, because lots of people love this game. In fact, it's really not even like a bad game. it's just not the game that I, as well as many original Luigi's Mansion fans, it's not the game we wanted. It's not the game that, there's lots of people that complain about Dark Moon just not being as good as the original, and it's not, in my opinion. There's so much wrong with it, and I just wish that they improved it a lot, and hopefully, when they make Luigi's Mansion 3, hopefully they improve on it. Hopefully they don't hand it to next level games, because I think they were the main problem. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video.